Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Gray Area here on the Black Man Unfiltered Network, simulcasting on the Sparta HQ Network. I'm Mr. Bennett, joined by my partner, as always,
This is Sparta!
the Ghost of Sparta, aka Peter, aka Panayotis. Yasu, my brother, what is going on?
What is going on, my man? How was your day?
Pretty good, pretty good. Got a lot of yard work done, so out there raking the leaves and getting putting the leaves out there. I had to put some gutter guards on my gutters, so just kind of working around the house and whatnot. But overall, fairly restful. And my Steelers finally won today, so I'm kind of happy about that. Although ugly as always, but I'll take it as a win as a win. And and also some teams in the conference also lost. So I'm feeling much better this week than I did last week. Although it's like I said, every game is just I just can't have an easy win. It's got to be always ugly.
At least you guys are doing better than my team is.
Like I said, you guys are preparing for next season. Just get the number one pick, get the top quarterback, and off you go. So, but we want to appreciate you guys for joining us tonight on the Gray Area. Make sure you hit the like button, certainly as you come in tonight. Certainly, supports the algorithms on both channels. Go over to the Sparta HQ Network, show some love over there as well. And certainly any cash apps or super chats that you want to give to the Black Man Unfiltered Network, you can certainly drop those here. You see scrolling at the bottom. So again, cash apps are always accepted here. And anything that you want to give to us personally, you'll see here our personal cash app scrolling on the bottom of the screen. And so I was really looking forward to this topic. Actually, the topic was in my mind over the summer. And the reason why it took me so long, because I know when I was making all those trips for work going to Georgia, I had a 2.5 hour drive, not to mention 2.5 hour plane flights from one spot to another. And so, just to fill the time, I'm always interested in learning different things or whatnot, especially things when it comes to my faith and whatnot. So the topic of war certainly was in my mind. And then I found, just different videos, debates on the topic of just war and pacifism. And this topic always intrigued me, especially now. I mean, obviously, you got war situation. We know what's going on in, Israel right now and that situation, and we know what's going on.
Don't forget what's going on in our own backyard right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's dissension all over the place, and so. But this, like I said, this started for me back in the summer, and I always wanted to kind of get back into it. But obviously, other shows that we did. We never got around to it. So I figured, it'd be a good time to kind of bring this up and let's talk about this a little bit about just war, I guess, in general. And I know, we know and we support a lot of our military vets. Obviously, we had vets on all last week. Was a great show. If you guys didn't watch the show last week, certainly we had comedian, former, military, 30-year military veteran, turned comedian on the show. So he was great from last week. And we always have a platform for military veterans. We certainly want to have them share their stories with us as far as their service and the experiences that they had. So we always defer to military veterans. But I've always had an interest. Yeah.
And we also had CQ, who's been shot multiple times overseas on his deployment. We had Dwayne White, we had King, we had Mandrell.
Mandrell. I mean, we're looking to do more of those. Joe Pacino actually was the but we had Dwayne White, who was great.
Speaking of the devil,
so I mean, so we had all kinds of folks who were part of that conversation, and we have
another one coming on next week too. Doug Bennett. Now we're gonna find out next week who's the real Bennett.
Well, I don't know. DNA will probably we're linked somewhere. So
you guys will actually look related in a way. When I look at the,
I don't know. So yeah, we may be related somewhere. But shout out to my man Eric in the building tonight, and Mandrell, as always, appreciate you being in.
My brother
conversation as well. And so I wanted to talk about this a little bit. Now, again, I may have inklings or leanings, some things may feel right to me in certain aspects of it. So I'm not trying to come down harder one way or another. I'm just kind of set the table for a conversation. And again, certainly the last thing I want to do is certainly offend anybody in the military, especially of those who've had combat training or combat service. Certainly is not the intention of doing that, but certainly for people like myself who are, try to be earnest about my faith and also try to look at things from an objective point of view, not necessarily drinking the Kool-Aid of, uh, nationalism or, anything like that. I kind of wanted to look at things a bit more clear-eyed. So, I wanted to have a conversation around this with that purpose in mind, but I'll say up front, certainly appreciate the military guys. And if any of you guys are offended by what we're saying, that's not our intent. But I do want to have an honest conversation about the course of action. It's interesting when we had Joe on last week, he was just talking about the incompetency of a lot of our military generals, like a lot of our leadership is just making wrong decisions. And for someone who, if you may have some second thoughts about either serving in the military or having, or if you're already in the military, in terms of asking questions about what we're doing and is what we're doing the right thing, I think those are honest conversations to have. And so certainly I want to kind of, foster that sort of attitude and mindset tonight, but it is not to offend. It's just to have a conversation. So
Also, I want to follow up with that. It doesn't matter if you're blue, red, white, green, or whatever. Tonight, we're all equal on equal ground level. So it doesn't matter
100%.
what your politics believe. That goes out the window. We're not going to have that tonight.
Yeah, this is
all
definitely
his
not trying to
crewmen-
get political at all.
yeah.
And what I'm
All the
sharing
captain
tonight,
of the ship tonight, and if he
yeah,
sees it, you're getting kicked out of the stream. Simple as that. So
100%,
please
100%.
respect our rules. And I'm asking nicely once only.
Right, right. So I think another aspect of why I want to have this conversation, and I know Pete, obviously you're a proud Greek, and you're always talking about your history and whatnot, and Spartans and warriors and things of that nature. And it just kind of dawned with me over the summer, like who we consider to be great, when we use that term. And a lot of times it'll go to like military people like Hannibal or Napoleon or some some generals of some kind or some military commanders or something like that.
Like
And I just
Alexander the
remember,
Great.
yeah, I mean, so, and I know these are, moments of pride for a lot of people. And I was just thinking to myself, I remember that line from Empire Strikes Back with Yoda, when Luke said, he crash lands on Dagobah and said, "I'm looking for a great warrior." And Yoda comes back and says, "Oh, great warrior. War's not what make one great." I'm kind of saying to myself, it's like, is how we think about these things, especially those who went about not necessarily defending, but actually going and conquering. Is it is that a right attitude that we should have when it comes to some of these people, especially when there have been casualties and people who just kind of want to just live their lives and whatnot, and there's going to be casualties from that. So I started in my mind kind of questioning some of that, also how we revere a lot of these great people or whatnot. And again, does that require a different context? So when we say, "Oh, he was great because he conquered half the world," is that great? I don't know. I mean, I'm those, like I said, those are just questions in my mind. What do you think about when it comes to questions like that, when it comes to military leaders and whatnot? And sorry, man, Joe. Yeah. So again, obviously, we're not trying to have a boring conversation. We certainly would appreciate your input, certainly in the chat tonight. So please stick around if you can. So I just want to, don't want to scare you away, but I hope you could be around for the conversation tonight. But go ahead, Pete.
It's funny you said that because I posted something on my personal Facebook. I don't know if you saw about George Washington. He was the one president who he wasn't campaigned. He didn't want to be a president. He had more failures as a general,
Right.
versus as a president.
Right.
And he was one of the, again, I'm not positive about this part, so please apologize my stupid comment if it comes out of that. He's the first president that resigned, actually, because they're still trying to figure this out. We're talking about 18 something, like the United States was first built. He's the one who came up with the idea. Let's call it the president, not a king. We do not want to be like where we came from.
Right.
So he's, as a general, he had a lot of failures, like I said.
Mhm.
I actually have the video. If you want, I can play it. Actually, I have 2 videos.
Sure.
I want to play that. So let me get it
George
set up
Washington
really
wasn't
fast.
Yeah, just share it now.
Yep, I'm
bring
doing
it
it
up.
right now, actually, and I'm gonna show the next one right after that, so we don't have to go back and forth. Oh, wrong one. There we go. All right.
Okay, you go ahead and play it.
Great general. He lost more battles than he won, but the few he won changed history forever. Before victory, he lost New York, Long Island, and Fort Washington. His army shrank, starving and freezing through the winter. British newspapers mocked him as the American blunder. But on Christmas night, 1776, he made a gamble. Crossing the icy Delaware River in a blizzard, he ambushed the Hessians at Trenton before dawn. That single win turned hopeless defeat into belief. Washington didn't rise by glory, he rose by endurance. He proved that failure can still forge greatness.
Let me play the other one really fast so we don't have to go back and forth.
George Washington didn't run for president the way modern politicians do. There were no campaigns, no ballots with his name printed, and definitely no popular vote. The United States had just broken away from the British monarchy, and the founding fathers were terrified of creating another king. So in 1788, when it came time to choose a leader under the brand new Constitution, they created something experimental, the Electoral College. Each state legislature selected electors, not the people. Those electors cast 2 votes each for president. The person with the most votes became president, and the runner-up became vice president. Everyone already knew who they wanted. George Washington was the undefeated choice. He didn't ask for votes, didn't give speeches, and didn't belong to a political party. In fact, he didn't even want the job. He accepted it out of duty. On February 4th, 1789, every one of the 69 electors voted for him. It's still the only unanimous presidential election in American history. But here's the twist. The vice president wasn't chosen by him. The runner-up automatically got the spot. That ended up being John Adams. They didn't even run as a team. Washington took the oath of office in New York City on April 30th, 1789, because Washington, D.C. didn't exist yet. There was no White House, no Secret Service, and no term limits. Congress had to invent everything from scratch: titles, salaries, protocols, even how to address the president. Some wanted to call him His Highness. Washington chose Mr. President instead. There were no ballots, no public speeches, no campaign trail. Just reputation, revolution, and fear of failure. The first election wasn't about power. It was about survival. And after Washington stepped down voluntarily, the world saw something no monarchy ever had: a leader who could walk away. George Washington didn't run.
So this is very fascinating to me for a couple of reasons. I've been always very fascinated with war. Now, I'm not a war lover, like, let's go to war, let's fight. No, please don't get it twisted. I'm fascinated with the stories that happen. The Evolution War, the Civil War, the Evolution War, the Korean War, Vietnam War, definitely the Vietnam War, World War II. There's a storm, and so on and so on and so on. What fascinates me about this story is there are a lot of stories that happened during the Evolution War. Like, for example, like the first video I played, like I said, he had more failures than success. He didn't even want to be president. And he became, I'm not saying he was one of the best presidents, but I'll give him the top 10. I think it's fair in our history.
Yeah.
So,
but it's always more pressure on the first, because if the first doesn't succeed,
unfortunately, yeah, like, okay, yeah,
so it's like being the first doesn't make you the best. I mean, but it is important. It is an important step in the process. The only thing in the video that kind of, I guess, bothered me is I know there's a lot of debate today. Again, not to get overly political, about the Electoral College and the fact that it seems to favor states that have smaller populations or whatnot, and like Jersey has more Electoral College votes than a lot of these smaller states like Maine and New Hampshire and whatnot, should they have?
I'll give you that. Yeah.
So again, so there's some things that are there that certainly I wouldn't mind at least being investigated or explored to see how we can make a more fairer system. That where the popular vote should matter, and how many times have we seen where someone wins the popular vote in an election but still lose because of the electoral college? And so so there's some things that I would like to have a robust conversation about that, or at least have our leadership have some conversations about the fairness. Is it really fair to have an electoral college system, or should you expand the state map? So again, statehood for DC and Puerto Rico, could that help the electoral college map in terms of balancing out a bit? Possibly, but that gets into conversations that a lot of people don't want to have. But yeah, let's get into this. I have a few slides to get through, and so basically I really want to frame this conversation tonight. Again, no offense to the vets or whatever, I'm just going to go back in history a little bit and just kind of bring it forward to have a conversation. So I just want to talk about these ideas of just war theory, because I think that more times than not is supposed to sort of frame our concept of what war should be about. Like Sparta was saying, it's not about, I want to go to war, whatever, but are there just conditions where war is right? Or is it just? Is it a necessity that we have to do? And then you have other groups of people called pacifists who believe, like, who live by a code that, look, war is never justified. And so, so those people, they're part of the conversation as well. And so I want to give some, just some breakdown and definition on both sides of that. So let's get into this a little bit. And I just put some slides together, and I'm not going to read through every single point, but just war theory, again, goes back again to the ancient, the Egyptians. They had a concept of just war, but it was based on, I think, on exceptionalism. So it's like there was three main ideas about just war. It included the cosmological role of Egypt, the pharaoh as a divine office, like, pharaoh was essentially a god and executor of the will of gods, and the superiority of the Egyptian state and population over all other states and peoples. So it was almost like basically what they're saying is, well, because we're Egyptians and because we're basically the best, if we decide to go to war, it basically is because we're the best. You know what I mean? Or because, the pharaoh has providential power, godlike powers to declare it, so it must be right because it comes from the pharaoh. So that seems to be, in their belief system, the reason why war could be waged. It just kind of came down to, basically his decision and the at least in the mindset of the people, their superiority. In India, you had two schools of thought. So again, you had in Hinduism, you had beliefs in terms of just war rules. There should be rules of conduct. So again, establishing criteria like proportionality, like chariots cannot attack the cavalry or other chariots. No attacking people in distress. Just means no poison or barbed arrows. No attacking out of rage, and fair treatment of captives and wounded. So it's like there's rules of engagement. If you are going to go to war, it shouldn't be total. It shouldn't just be barbaric. It shouldn't be just out of, just looking to slaughter people. That there needs to be. Yeah,
it's funny you bring this up because it is something. I don't remember the exact term for it. They do have a rule, like a engagement rule, pretty much. You don't attack children, women, and so on and so on. You don't use nuclear weapons or weapons of WMDs and mass destruction.
We're gonna get into it. That's gonna be coming up. Yeah, that's gonna be
similar. My point was trying to get really fast was it's similar. Those Indian rules are similar to what we have
right, and we're gonna evolve there. So I'm gonna so I'm just kind of going back in time and I'm kind of bringing it forward. But yeah, you're definitely on the right track though. Again, Sikhism, which is again also from India, it's a different religion, but again, just wars out of righteous or religious reasons, especially in deference of one's own beliefs. So again, there's certain, there was an emphasis that military force may be justified if all peaceful means to settle a conflict had been exhausted, thus resulting in, I can't even, Daramuth, I can't even pronounce can't even pronounce the term. But again, there's even in their philosophy, there's a rules like, you only go to war as a last resort is basically what they're trying to say. So again, war for just totalitarianism reasons, or just to conquer people, isn't necessarily exhausting all means, especially if you go talk about the lives of civilians and the like. So again, there's some rules there even in Sikhism and in ancient Hinduism when it comes to war. In East Asia, again, Chinese philosophy produced massive work on warfare. So I know my man Eric, he was talking about Sun Tzu, and certainly a lot of people even today study a lot of those things. But again, even in that philosophy, war was justified only as a last resort and only by the rightful sovereign. However, questioning the decision of the emperor concerning the necessity of a military action was not permissible. So it's almost like a catch-22. You set rules in that, is it a last resort? But you can't question the ruler of the time whether or not it's a last resort or not. So that's almost like it's almost like a gotcha kind of thing, where you're trusting in whoever the ruler is to make the right decision. And in Japan, obviously, they have a feudal time as well that also draws heavily on Chinese philosophy, especially Confucian views. As part of the Japanese campaign to take the northeast island of Honshu, Japanese military action was portrayed as an effort to pacify the Emishi people, who were likened to bandits, wild-hearted and wild cubs, and accused of invading Japan's frontier lands. So again, this originated early, but we also know about, from history, a lot of the atrocities that Japan did, especially during World War II, especially in China. They call it the Grape of Nanking, and a lot of how they treated a lot of prisoners in war certainly did not necessarily align with this philosophy. But there was a Japanese philosophy when it came to war that, like everybody else, wasn't always followed, and didn't always follow the tenets of it. And this kind of gets more into your wheelhouse when you talk about ancient Greece and Rome. So again, Aristotle was one who first introduced the concept of just war. Called war a last resort, requiring conduct that would allow the restoration of peace. Aristotle argues that the cultivation of a military is necessary and good for the purposes of self-defense, not for conquering. The proper object of practicing military training that is not in order that men may enslave those who do not deserve slavery, but that in order that they may themselves avoid becoming enslaved to others. All right. And then you had a Stoic philosopher. He talked about just war could be waged solely for retribution or defense, in both cases having to be declared officially. All right. So this goes to, ancient views, ancient philosophers, and their views of war. Was it always carried out that way? Probably not.
No,
But at least you had
touch
some
base on
thought
this one,
process here.
guys.
Yeah.
So Greece didn't become a big country, like this major country, like everybody think it was. To years later, during ancient Greece, they were pockets in Greece. Like Sparta was their own country, Athens was their own country, Crete was their own country, and so on and so on. Troa was their own country, and that's part of Greece. So they all fought each other like, yo, we want that territory because it's rich with materials, water, wood, metal, whatever the case was. So they fought over that. Sparta is one of the few ones that they raised their children as younglings, as warriors. They used to, when they were born, literally maybe I would say a few hours they were after they're born, they take them up to the mountain and get examined by this ancient one, and he will literally turn the baby upside down, and if he didn't have passed that test, he will literally throw the baby off the cliff to die.
Yeah.
If he did not pass the test.
Right.
And then when they get a certain age, I believe it was 8, am I mistaken? I got to double check. They send them to boot camp at 8 years old. And they won't come back to their at least between, I believe, 12 or 15. I can't remember the age, to be honest with you. And when they come back, they're coming back as men, not as children anymore. And they have to learn how to fight. They have to learn how to survive in the wilderness. They have to also learn how to steal. That's all part of the training. What happened? You're behind enemy lines. You need to steal food to survive. If you get caught, you get punished. If you fail, you get punished. Failure is not an option. The only failure they believed in, they were similar to the Vikings, is death. Death is the most honorable thing you could have done for a Spartan. Like, I know the 300 had really milked it down a lot to the comic book version of the Spartan 300, but one scene is very accurate. Is his Lena, his wife, said, "Come with your shield, come with your shield on, come with your shield, or be carried on your shield." Meaning, either way, dead or alive, you're coming home. But there's only two options you have. Failure is not an option.
Right. And just here on Rome, in ancient Rome, just war cause might include the necessity of repelling an invasion or retaliation for pillaging or breach of a treaty. War was always potentially wrong, and risked righteous pollution and divine disfavor. A just war required a ritualized declaration by the official priests. More broadly, conventions of war and treaty making were part of the, again, I'm not going to get that word right, us gentium, the law of nations, and customary moral obligations resulted as innate and universal to human beings. So again, I think this more so applies to, again, once wars have been fought, what is the purpose of going to war? Is to, at the end of the day, try to bring a peaceful resolution, or to bring things were peaceful at one time, to bring things back in order. It wasn't meant to annihilate persons or whole peoples or nations. So again, these are just ancient practices of certain groups. Now, once we get into the Christian area, this is where it gets interesting for me, because obviously I'm Christian. We're both Christians here. So, so again, this may get into more territory that we may be familiar with. So again, Saint Augustine is basically the one who started to institute a just war theory. Now, get into why his role is particularly important here, because it has to do with dating and certain historical events happening. But he was the one who started to introduce this into Christian thought and into Christian thinking, and this was around the 3rd century. So again, he says, and he says the just war theory with some amendments is still used by Christians today as a guide to whether or not a war can be justified. So again, his early thought process led to other thought processes. Just reading the second part here, Augustine argues that Christians, as part of government, need not be ashamed of protecting peace and punishing wickedness when they are forced to do so by a government. Augustine asserted that was a personal and philosophical stance. What is here required is not a bodily action, but an inward disposition. The sacred seat of virtue is the heart. So he was, but he was the one who really kicked that off. From what I understand, he even said that sometimes even torture can be justified. Again, when you're fighting a particular war, there's certain practices that need to be done. Those things kind of followed. Now, he led to another guy who's, kind of more central to the idea of just war theory, is St. Thomas Aquinas. Now, he came 1,000 years later, right? In the 13th century. He started to put together a just war theory that I think has been adopted. Certainly, I think the Catholic Church, holds to a lot of these views. Now, again, I don't know about the Greek Orthodox Church or the Orthodox Church in general. This is why I wouldn't mind having a conversation with Father Casadino and just kind of getting an Orthodox view when it comes to just war theory, or the views of Aquinas or Augustine or whatever. What do they think about it? Because I know there was all one church at one time until the Catholics split off, and you have all those events that happened in history.
From my understanding, from conversations we have, the only time a war was okay was on a self-defense basis. If you're defending your home, your church, your wife, in stuff that case. I might be completely wrong. I'm no priest. Obviously, you guys know I'm no innocent angel either. I have my downfalls like everybody else. So again, I might be completely wrong. So don't take my word as gossip. as holy, but that's my understanding is on self-defense base. Yes. Like something like my martial arts, for example, you never throw the first strike, but you always finish the fight.
Right.
Similar to that. I might be completely wrong on that.
I got you. Yeah, and like I said, that could be a conversation certainly to be had later. But basically, he developed a core set of beliefs that was based on 3 requirements. All right. So he said, firstly, the war must be waged upon the command of a rightful sovereign. So nobody could just go to war. So again, this actually raised the question, were the Christian Crusades just? Because that wasn't declared by a state. That was basically the church going to war with, I guess, the Arabs, because they saw atrocities going on, but as a state or sovereign government did not declare that. So there's a question about were the Crusades a just war, even though they believed, the church believed at the time, that it was for a just purpose. Secondly, the war needs to be waged for just cause on account of some wrong the attacked have committed. And thirdly, warriors must have the right intent, namely to promote good and to avoid evil. Now, so based on those 3 main views, he developed 8 rules when it comes to just war. So I just want to kind of go through those and look at those as so this is, again, Just War by Thomas Aquinas. 1, a just war can only be waged as a last resort. All nonviolent options must be exhausted before the use of force can be justified. All right, so that's rule number 1. And you can stop me anytime if you have a comment on any one of these.
Go ahead.
All right, rule number 2, a war is only just if it is waged by a legitimate authority, like, in his view, like a government, to declare war. But any kind of other group cannot declare or go to war with someone else. That it has to come from some sort of authority. Number 3, a just war can only be fought to redress a wrong suffered. For example, self-defense against an armed attack is always considered to be a just cause. So that kind of goes to what you were saying earlier about martial arts or whatever, self-defense. Those sort of beliefs are part of Thomas Aquinas's just war theory. Number 4, furthermore, a just war can only be fought with the right intentions. The only permissible objective of a just war is to redress the injury. All right. Number 5. Yeah. Number 5. Oh, yeah.
I disagree because, you might consider something an injury, but the other side might say it's not. That's where the back and forth, like I say, oh, I punched you in the arm. Okay, so what? You just punched me in the arm. It was a big deal. You may take that very personal. The other person will not. So that is a great topic, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. Because again, it's a subjective. It's basically it's a subjective act, right? You believe that you've been, whatever injury came to you. How do you address that? But it also goes into
bingo.
There's another part of this, almost like a part B to this. Number 5. A war can only be just if it is fought with a reasonable chance of success. Death and injury incurred in a hopeless cause are not morally justifiable. So again, if you just fighting just for honor, even though you're going to be, taken out, I guess in his view, that's not just if you can't win it. If you're going to go in there, you need to, if you're vastly outnumbered, is it better, I guess, just simply to surrender? Or is it just, okay, we're going to just fight to the last man and be done with it, even though there's no outcome for us? That seems to be the rationale between for number 5. Number 6, the ultimate goal of a just war is to reestablish peace. More specifically, the peace established after the war must be preferable to the peace that would have prevailed if the war had not been fought. So that's, another goal of it. So again, it's not about annihilation. It's not about conquering just because, oh, they got something over there that we want, so we're just going to go get it. You know, again, it's ultimately if blood is going to be shed, it's because there might have been a situation where there's none, and now you're just trying to get it back to where it was. Number 7. Now, this is where it gets really dicey to a point that you said earlier. The violence used in war must be proportional to the injury suffered. So again, if someone slaps you, you can't break their arm, or you can't beat them within an inch of their life. If you want to apply just war theory, that it should be proportional. Now the question is, now again, we got to look at a whole bunch of even the wars that we always talk about that are quote unquote just, like World War II is what everybody kind of goes to. Yeah, that was a just war because we were attacked, what Germany was doing and what Japan did to us and whatnot. But again, something like 3,000 people died at Pearl Harbor, but we dropped a nuclear weapons on Japan. Is that proportionate to the harm that was done to us? You know what I'm saying? So that's the the discussion on, is the violence proportional? Someone hits you, does that mean that you automatically get the right to beat them within an ounce of their life or take them out altogether because they hit you? So again, proportionality is a part of the just war theory adopted by Aquinas. And again, why we're raising Aquinas is because, again, for the most part, a lot of even this country's policy when it comes to at least what's said. Now, what's actually done, I mean, we've talked to guys in the military, what is actually done. I know Rob, I know he talked about it and stuff, and he was pretty blunt about it. It's like sometimes you got to do
nasty.
You got to do some nasty stuff if you want a result. So he, what's actually practical, but again, at least what we're taught is that, again, we go to war for just causes. We're not conquerors. We don't want a nation built. We don't want to do these things. But again, we know from history. In fact, I just watched a documentary a couple nights ago. So on PBS, it just came out recently on Henry Kissinger and that whole era with Nixon and those guys. And Kissinger was, let's just say, an interesting person in terms of his views just overall. And how his views were informed. Now, again, this is a guy who had to deal with, the Nazis and that sort of situation and whatnot. So he remembers what that was like. He's seen concentration camps and all that, but it definitely shaped how he looked at geopolitical politics. And amongst the things, he was like, look, if certain people have to be taken out in order for a higher purpose, especially the protection of the United States has to be done, then so be it. But he wasn't above letting certain people just be offed. It's like those people don't matter as long as it serves U.S. interests. So he was kind of like, like I said, a very interesting person. I've heard other people call him a war criminal, but I'm not getting into that discussion. But again, some of the policies that were instituted, certainly in the 60s and 70s, of which he was certainly a member of the Nixon administration. A lot of people still questioning a lot of that today. And then the last point, the weapons used in war must discriminate between combatants and non-combatants. Civilians are never permissible targets of war, and every effort must be made to avoid killing civilians. So those are the 8 pillars of just war theory.
It's funny
that
about
were adopted by Aquinas, that the Catholic Church, I think, for the most part, follows, and other, Protestant religious groups follow, and it certainly forms the basis of kind of how we're taught. Whether or not it's followed or not, that's another story. But at least that's what we've been told, that to justify even the church's role in history. When it comes to certain wars or certain interactions, how the church can then justify, a nation's actions, or where church may stand on an action, is oftentimes defined by these 8 principles. And so, so any thoughts on this? And then I'll go to the other side of the ledger, but I just wanted to kind of go through this. It's the largest one here, but I just wanted to kind of set that up. So any of those 8 or anything that you want to say on the
the last one I want to touch base on, it's very similar to what they have now. I believe it's called a Geneva Code, something
Geneva.
Thank you. It is very similar to the code they have now. You don't attack civilians on like stuff. Obviously, we know the current war with Russia and Ukraine, that those went out the window, and that they were attacking children, civilians. You know, they were using weapons that were banned in war. These are just rules. Nobody said they have to follow them. Think about it. Think what I'm saying.
That's kind of myself. Yeah, there are rules, but we don't have to follow them.
Yeah, like where does it say during a war you're going to war? Are you going to sign a piece of paper, document, like you're buying a car, for example? Okay, you're going to get the oil changed at certain miles. You're going to do this, 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 and this, and we're going to keep our promise. We won't, go back and forth with you.
Right.
Nowhere in that says during war you're going to sign this document saying you cannot use a 10 millimeter bullet. You cannot use grenades or tear gas or bioweapons or whatever the case is. Tell me when they go to war, all these rules are just theories in a way. We're hoping you're going to follow these rules,
right?
But if you don't, okay, you're going to pay the price when you lose. We'll figure out when you lose the war. Don't worry, we'll talk about it when you lose the war or if you win the war, you get punished or not. Like from the UN or whatever. I'm not sure who punishes who will break the rules.
Yeah. But again, certainly for those who are, conscientious about certain things, like I said, if you're a Christian, right? And you're thinking about these things, how do you approach them? Knowing what is being said. And if you just read them in and of themselves, you can say, yeah, that kind of makes some sense. Or, yeah, that is, if I'm going to go to war, yeah, these are things I can get behind. But I can't get behind just going into villages and wiping people out. I can't get behind just bombing countries like Laos or whatever. But these things happened. And so how am I, as a person who's got to fire these shots or drop those bombs or do those things, how do I justify that in my I mean, yes, there's theories and there's actions that states have, but then I have a conscience as well. And what do I do with that? The guys who dropped the Enola Gay that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, and then the one that came after Nagasaki, I gotta in my mind, I gotta justify that. You know what I mean? And so, yes, obviously I got my commandment to go and do it. And they had other targets. If Japan wasn't going to surrender, they had other targets that they were going to go and sight. So this wasn't going to be the end. It really depended on how long Japan was going to hold out. But I got to rationalize that. And again, we've also seen especially in Vietnam, we've seen cases about where soldiers have been tried for atrocities. And basically their defense was, oh, my commander told us to do this. And they were still prosecuting, saying, no, like in the military, there should be something that says, yes, I know your commanding officer told you to do this, but no, we're not doing this.
But here's the catch-22 of that, Paul.
Right.
If you don't follow orders, you will get punished. You might lose rank and pay.
That's the argument. That's why I want to have this discussion.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm saying this can raise issues of conscience with an individual, regardless of where you are, regardless of what military that you're serving in or what have you. This can really mess with you. And we have veterans who are messed up because of things that they had to do that they never psychologically dealt with. How many veterans came back with PTSD and dealing with stuff or whatever, and are they getting the support and the services that they need because of certain actions that they were called on to do? And how many are even deleting themselves because they can't live with the consequences of their actions? Now, some can make that disconnect. Others can't. And I know there's military groups out there that, certainly are opining to end war or war practices or whatnot. There's all kinds of conscientious objectors that are out there having been in the theater of war. So these aren't people just talking from the sideline. These are people who've been in the thick and being like, yo, what are we doing? And in fact, Vietnam was like the first war where we were asking the question, why are we here? Like I said, World War II made sense because of the Germans and the Japan. Okay, we get that. What are we doing? in Vietnam? Can someone explain to me what the mission is? Because as soon as we left Vietnam, the Khmer Rouge came in and they did what they did. You know,
To be fair, highlight Manjor's last comment because he has a good point
yeah,
there.
it's well. First, I mean, we picked the shows based on when we picked the show. I mean, certainly we would love to have a show in the future. In fact, you can even join us on our next call-in show if you want to raise this again. The whole purpose of the show is me and Peter having the conversation, just like we have on a lot of different things. Not every show is going to be a panel, but you're certainly welcome to it. And again, if you want to take down some of these questions and whatnot and bring it back when we have our next open call, which should happen, I think, next week or the week after. I think we're almost
not next week after, because next week
the week after that, because we have an interview coming up. Please join the conversation and bring all this back up. Like I said,
I'll do you a favor, Mandrell. I will text you a week prior, remind you, and sure you can get permission from your wife to come out play. I have to hit a little nut shot there. But no, you do have a good point you're raising there. Like, when we were going, Vietnam was the first war we were asking, why the fuck are we there? And nobody could answer that question. To this day, nobody can answer that question.
Yeah. Or and even if you bought the line, right? We were there to repel communism. But at the end of the day, communism won. So
that's why I don't believe that. I think it was
so that's what I'm saying. So it's when you start to lose faith with certainly the your military, at least the soldiers who have to go and fight these things, yeah, that could be a problem. And that can lead to, and there were a lot of conscientious objectors, there were a lot of defectors, there were a lot of people who moved to Canada to avoid the draft. There were a lot of things because people were saying, you know what, some of these things weren't right. And should I be part of something like this? Which then, for me, then goes to the other side of the coin. Now, there is a school of thought, not to say that I agree with it all, but there is a thought out there called pacifism. Now, again, I want to focus specifically on Christian pacifism because I said earlier that really just war theory started with St. Thomas Aquinas in the 3rd century. Why that's important is because it's in the 3rd century when Christianity became the official religion of Rome. And so when that happened, you want to call it politics, you want to call it why then all of a sudden you had this just war theory came out once the Roman emperor at the time decided to essentially Christianize the nation. Did they barter a deal to say, look, we'll make Christianity because we were throwing you guys to the lions back in the day or whatever, but we'll bring you guys out to make you because before it was looked at as a cult. It was like a little group or whatever, but now we'll legitimize you. But if we legitimize you, then you got to give us something back. And you got to basically say, okay, it's okay for us to go when we go in wars and we conquer stuff or whatever, then we say, okay, well, it's okay to do it in certain circumstances. I don't know. I can't speak to that. I don't know if that was a deal done, but the point is prior to Christianity becoming the official religion of Rome, church fathers and historians prior to St. Augustine were staunch pacifists. So starting with Justin Martyr, okay, so he quoted again, we who formerly used to murder one another do not only refrain from making war upon our enemies, but also we may not lie nor deceive our examiners, willingly die confessing Christ. And we are and we who were filled with war and mutual slaughter and every wickedness have each through the whole heart changed our warlike weapons, our swords, and our plowshares, and our spears to implement our tillage and to cultivate piety. So he was like, look, I'm not warring. And if that means my life, for Christ I live and for Christ I die. And look, you're going to have to take me out, but I'm not picking up a weapon against my fellow human being. Then you had Titian of Augustine. Again, similar thoughts. I'm just going to go through the names just to, just for time's sake. Again, Aristides, Hippo of Rome, Tertullian, Origen. I found his quotes interesting, where he says, again, Jews were permitted to take up arms in defense of the members of their families and to slay their enemies. All right, so we know the Old Testament is full of all that. The Christian lawgiver has altogether forbidden the men to putting of men to death. He nowhere teaches that it is right that his own disciples to offer violence to anyone, however wicked. So you had some early, and this is why I wanted to again have the conversation with your father Costadino on get an orthodox view, because again, all of these guys, they were all kind of on the bandwagon before the Catholics branched off. So how much do they follow these guys or this train of thought, or they're more in the Augustinian line of thinking? I don't know. That's where I'd like to find out. But I just I'm saying this to say,
all the saints, what I know with the Orthodox Church, that has never mentioned any of them say they picked up the sword and they went to war, or they picked up a weapon, or said, "Hey, go kill these people." There was the opposite. They set their hands in the air. Listen, I'm not fighting. And they end up getting murdered or crucified in some shape, way, or form. So, again, I'm not no expert. So take that with a grain of salt, what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm pretty sure Father Costadino is going to agree, and most of our saints have not ever picked up a weapon and go to war.
Mm-hmm.
Because even when I look at the icons in my church, the only icons that have any type of shape or form is Archangel Michael with the sword, because he's a archangel, and everybody knows Archangel Michael is the one who always fought right hand side of God. So and Gabriel, that's only two icons in the whole church that has any type of weapon in their hands. Everybody else is usually a cross and a Bible in their hands.
Yeah. And like I said, so these early guys, they were like, look, I'm not joining. In fact, again, you had Tertullian. He wouldn't even offer, if you were a soldier in the military, you couldn't even take sacraments because you were engaged in a practice that went, in his view, against when Jesus said turn the other cheek or what have you. Like, they took that stuff like seriously. You know what I mean? So again, so even in the early church, you had this change. You had these early guys, all these guys came before Augustine. And then after Augustine, then you had Thomas Aquinas, who developed that just war theory that we went over. And that, for the most part, is still what a lot that informs whether or not we follow it or not. It still informs a lot of our thinking when it comes to, is it right or not? Should we just go and just bomb somebody because we want their oil or something? Is that right? And if we say it's not right, then where do we go to? A lot of it will go back down to Thomas Aquinas and his reasoning on just war as to why we do or don't do certain things because of those tenets that he was talking about. Now, here is a group, a list of religious groups, both Christian and non-Christian, that promote pacifism. These groups, Mennonites, which includes the Amish, Quakers. It's interesting. President Nixon was a Quaker. He grew up as a Quaker, and Quakers were pacifists. You couldn't join the military or commit violent action as a Quaker. But in Vietnam, he did things like the Christmas bombing of Laos. I mean, just did all kinds of stuff that he did in order to bring, I guess, the northern Vietnamese to the table or what have you. But again, at the end of the day, Vietnam was a lost cause. But how many actions that coming from a Quaker background that he did what some people would view, him and Kissinger did certain things that some people would call atrocities. Anabaptists, Seventh-day Adventists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Baha'i Buddhists, Unitarian Universalists, First Church of our Lord Jesus Christ. I bring that up because, again, especially in these spaces, you have a lot of people who talk about Geno Jennings, this black preacher who they'll play in all these videos and stuff, and people will put his stuff up there. I have the guy's bylaws of his church because I was interested in who he was and what they believed, because everybody was talking about Geno Jennings. And they are so strict about violence. If you're a member of his church or series of churches, you can't even own a gun. Not only you can't own a gun, you cannot work for a place or be in a vehicle that's transporting guns. So again, they are very much pacifist. The Nation of Islam is mostly pacifist. They don't allow their members to join the military. So you have a lot of religions groups that have these conditions where it's like it goes against their conscience. I mean, we all know about Muhammad Ali. He said, "I'm not going into another area to bomb other people when the country that I live in, I don't even get rights. I don't even get rights as a human being in my own country. Yet you want to send me halfway around the world." He had the famous quote. I won't repeat it. He said, "No Viet Cong ever called me the N-word." And he got suspended. We all know 3 years he couldn't fight, but he won his case in the Supreme Court because he declared himself as a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War. And so again, we see Buddhists, we see other. It's not just a Christian thing, but you have other groups who are just not committed to war or warfare. And so you hear these voices a lot of times in the discussion, and then people may become pacifists or start to question things. Again, look at our records since World War II. Korean War got fought to a standstill, right? We were coming off the high of World War II, right? But we got North Korea, South Korea. We got the 38th parallel. That's still today, 70 years later. It's still there. Vietnam, we lost it. Khmer Rouge came in right after that, and boom, that was it. Iraq War II with Bush, we found that. We deposed Saddam, but we found that they weren't even responsible for it. And we all know about Afghanistan. We pulled out, but there was no clear victory. The Russians were in Afghanistan for 20 years, got nothing out of it. Then we decided to go and thought we could do better, and we got nothing out of it.
So do me a favor, highlight the last 3 comments of Mandrell. So you had some very good point there. There's the one. I have a hard time answering this question personally.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have something a little better, because I can't answer this comfortably because I don't have too much information on that off my head right now.
Okay. All right. So for the first one, again, I would go back to the writings of let me go back if I can to what this I think it was Origin who said that. Origin. Basically he's saying, look, it's a new day. Right? It's like, back in the day, Jews, Old Testament, it was all full of blood and guts and violence and wars and all that kind of stuff. But for the Christian person, that stuff should not exist. And some people follow that to the T. It's like, the old ways of, God was a God of war, now it's a God of peace. And Jesus never said, now some people may argue. It said Jesus said, God's go in the last days going to get rough, go buy a sword. So I said, well, if he said go buy a sword, then he must have been down with war.
But also, Jesus also said, right before he got crucified, I can't command 1,000 legions of angels.
If he wanted to,
I'm going to.
Yeah.
And so he went with the peace route.
Yeah. And for a lot of his followers, they were like, well, look, he didn't go to war. I'm not going to war. And so for a lot of those religious groups that I listed earlier, the Mennonites and Anabaptists and whatnot, the Quakers, they kind of follow that. And so it's definitely something there. So for some people, they would say, well, again, Christianity is not Judaism. And for those who would still want, and I see a lot of that today, that where you have a lot of Christian people saying, we need to kind of go back to the old Jewish ways or something like that. And some people are like, no, we are not of that ilk. So, so this is why, why I won't go to war, or I'm not going to use the Old Testament as a reason or justification to go to war because I'm not part of the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
Now he also says this is why I'm a Stoic and not a Christian. Okay, I can appreciate that. Again, Mandrell grew up as a Seventh-day Adventist, and people wonder why I left. So again, I understand that. As far as what changed his mind, I say yes. or he just a new way of doing things. And people say, well, God doesn't change his mind. Again, it's a new covenant or it's a new testament for a reason. And so, again, the way things were done in the past doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the way of the future. In the Old Testament, how you got redemption was by slaughtering bulls and goats. You don't do that in the New Testament. So
he also he did purify the earth with flooding the earth with all the evil, with Noah's Ark. And that's a reboot.
Right.
And it depends what you believe. If you, I've been having this debate with Father Casadino for a while now, and I personally think the second coming of Christ is coming a lot closer to our lifetime than we think. And that's a whole different show, a different conversation, obviously.
Yeah.
But
again, but it's interesting. But the questions Mandrell asking, I appreciate what he's saying.
Oh, I respect what he's saying.
And I'm not saying one way. Now, I may lean more non-war, whatever, just my own personal, at least the way I'm thinking about it. Am I thinking, is there no case where you go to war? No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is just based on the screen that we're seeing here, we got to start asking ourselves some questions about if this is the current state of what we've been doing, how many lives have been lost, how much money's being spent, and is this really what we need to be about or what we need to be doing? I think that's a fair and honest question to ask, especially in these times when we're seeing some people say defeat after defeat after defeat, or we're spending all this time and treasure and we're not getting a whole lot for it.
So here's one thing I want to say in Manjuro's defense, CQ's defense, Rob's defense, even King's defense. A lot of people who have seen combat, actually I can't count King because he never saw combat, but people who have seen combat usually question about what God does. Because when you see these horrible things and horrible things you got to do just to survive, just to come back to your loved ones and bring your teammates, your unit, your squad, whatever back, you got to do some fucked up shit. And if you're not a little fucked up in the head coming back, then you're not human. And I do understand where Major is coming from as a veteran. And, and definitely his level of veteran, he was just like a foot soldier, he was a Green Beret. So he's some crazy shit. So again, I do understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, and the question that he's asking here. So if God changed his mind and needs to do a reboot, then how is he perfect? That's a religious question. That's a philosophical question. That's something we can entertain in another show. I don't even know if I'm qualified to answer that question, but I can share my view on it. But that's a serious question. But it's certainly for those, if you are of faith, these are questions that I'm sure you have to ask yourself. And some people are going to come out on different sides. Some people are going to say, okay, yes, I'm gonna follow just war theory or whatever. I'm gonna go and serve my country or whatever. Or some people just saying, "Nah, I'm out." Which and another point of view here again, defense spending, right? So again, the most amount. I know you can't see all the numbers on the bottom, but it basically goes all the way back to 1792. The biggest point of spending as a percentage of our GDP was during World War II, which is the big spike here in the 40s, and then it's kind of tapered off. Since then, we haven't spent that kind of money. But as far as defense spending overall, over the years, it has grown significantly. Again, it had that spike in World War II, but it's growing again. So again, the military-industrial complex, which Eisenhower termed, right? So again, we have people questioning, what's this really about? Because I think prior to World War II or even afterwards, I don't think anybody was thinking it was necessarily a money thing. But now you got defense contractors and whatnot. And, you saw with Iraq, with Cheney, with Halliburton, and all these guys making money hand over fist. And so now is war now looked at as more of an enterprise, more so than just this righteous cause that we have, which again is promoted and fed to our troops and our soldiers and everybody to justify the things that we're doing.
So hang on one second before we move on. Highlight Mandrell's question. I want to respond to this. So Mandrell, I cannot give you that answer, but I know somebody who can't, and I have his number. So I am going to reach out to Father Costantino, and I will reach out to you personally when I get those answers, because these are answers that you need. I'll get them for you, and that is my word as your brother, and I will get them for you.
Yeah, and I think we all wrestle with these questions, or we may think we come to a piece about the answer that we have, and then something happens, and then we start to question it again. But again, Mandrell, the fact that he's been in theaters of war, he's seen things that nobody's probably ever seen. And so for him to be questioning all of this stuff, I think it's legit. And I would certainly never dissuade him from not keep asking questions and seeking questions about these topics. It's very difficult. But again, when we talk about what decisions or how does conscience inform our decisions to go to war, I think we have to look at, we have to look at all these things, how much the cost, the price of war, not only in terms of human capital, but in terms of the money that's being spent.
I gotta talk about that for a second, Paul.
Yeah.
Because one thing I have learned over the years, every time we go to war, some shape, way, or form, it's usually right after we're struggling with financially in any country. It's like a depression or a recession. So when we go to war, things start opening up. Like, okay, now we have to open factories and make guns, bullets, armors, uniforms.
Right.
And
we also have to look. We also have to accept that going to war is the reason why we have this platform, right? Why we have computers the way we do, why we have technology, why we have the internet, why we have satellites, why we have everything. So the enterprise of war is the reason why we have cell phones and all the things that make up why we're able to have this conversation in the form that we're doing it. So people don't just develop stuff out of just, because it's cool to do. The Wright brothers, they might have had an idea, okay, hey, this is cool to do. But again, airplanes didn't become a part of warfare until they felt that they found a military application for it to expand and build an air force. That's when stuff came up. That's when the jet engine was created, which also allows for passenger travel around the world. So we got to be honest about it too, that, war can be dirty business, and it is an enterprise, as Mandrell is saying, but because of that enterprise, we have the lifestyle that we have. And there's no getting away from that. So again, so I can understand someone calling the quote unquote the pacifist a bit of a hypocrite, because it's like, look, you live in a nation in the world that was built on war. Even though you want to say that, hey, war, I'm not going to be a part of it, but you live in it, whether you like to or not, unless you want to be like the Amish and live off the land or go to some remote island somewhere and not even be a part of something. Then you really don't have anything to say as part of the conversation. But to live in the United States, for Jehovah's Witness, for example, to live in the United States and talk their stuff about, war's wrong, we should never go in war and no one participate, but you live and breathe because this country went to war, and you enjoy the freedoms to practice your very religion because of the wars that have been fought. You're being a hypocrite when you condemn or criticize the warfare. Because otherwise you wouldn't have even the church, the Kingdom Hall that you belong to. You couldn't have. Or go to another country where religious freedom is restricted and see how you're going to operate over there because of it. Again, like I said, I'm trying to be fair. I'm looking at this from all sides. I get those who say that war has to be fought, and there's actual benefits and freedoms that we had because wars were fought and people were willing to fight them. But if we just laid down our arms when Hitler came to the door or whatever, we probably wouldn't be here right now. So I get that part of all. So I'm not coming down. I'm saying this is the gray area. This is the complex conversation. And yes, military people have to ask the question. Civilians have to ask the question. Priests and pastors have to have this conversation. Because again, you may have members of your congregation who might be military or thinking about military service. Everybody has to deal with this at some point or another. That if I'm called to pick up in arms against another human, even somebody who might even be another Christian. Because people forget sometimes that, yes, the United States isn't the only Christian nation. There's Christians. I might be in warfare and I might be going against a brother in Christ. And it may came down to between me and him. I got to look at that. So those are questions I think that are fair. And again, I'm not looking for answers tonight. But I think, certainly as Mandrell has been raising good questions that go beyond just the topic. It goes to the nature of God himself or herself, or however you want to look at God if you don't believe in God at all. But philosophically, religiously, however you want to look at it, these are questions that people, in fact, more and more are asking. Because the last slide I wanted to show tonight was, this is from Mother Jones, and there was a couple other articles too. Now, I don't know what current policy is right now, because obviously we have a new administration. But again, there are steps. If you decide you're in the military, but you choose to be a conscientious objector, you will not participate in the theater of war. Now, you may serve in another capacity, maybe in an administrative capacity, maybe as a doctor or something like that, but I am not picking up in arms against somebody. There are procedures in place where you can apply for status as a conscientious objector. Now, again, I don't know if that's still the case now, because, again, we know that the Department of Defense has been renamed and rebranded the Department of War. And the question that Mother Jones' article is raising here is that, are we going to see more conscientious objectors, since the current administration is basically saying, hey, this is about war. And if you ain't, basically what they're saying is, if you ain't about that life, if you're not about what we're trying to put down, then maybe you should get out. And maybe you may have either more people either leaving or more people trying to apply for that. I don't even know if they even will keep this in play to say, can you be a conscientious objector, at least in this current military? I don't even know if that's possible anymore. This here was from 2020. I think it was from 2017. So I don't even know what the current administration's even view or policy is on this anymore. But those are questions that I think a lot of people, if you are in military, and they already said, this is a Department of War. So I want no confusion in terms of what this is about. If you can't deal with that, leave. So I'm just saying, these are things that, again, people have to ask. And it gets down to conscience at the end of the day, as well as just the practicality of the event. But I didn't mean to cut you off. But
no, you're fine. I want to mention two things.
You can cook from here, because I'm taking the slides down.
Yeah, first thing I want to talk about is, I had a similar conversation years ago. I was like maybe 8-9 years ago with somebody about firearms. All right, and it got heated fast. I'm like, wow, this went through wrong way. I wanted to, but one thing people need to understand: yes, these companies that make guns, Smith and Wesson, and all these companies, they do donate a lot of money to things to help us save people's lives. At the end of the day. They're not just going to, like, say, death. Every bullet they make. No, they don't. A good example of what we were saying earlier was the Enterprise. You ever seen a movie of Nicolas Cage called Warlog, Man or something like that? You know what I'm talking about, right?
No, I know the actor, but I'm not familiar with the movie.
So he was a gun dealer, black market gun dealer, whatever. He made a lot of money. But again, it was a business. And people try to put him in jail because he made money of guns that were left behind during the wars. It was an opportunity. He made money. It was a business. And they beat the guy wrong for that. I'm sorry. But he was selling at the wrong side. Who are you to tell a businessman who can sell, who you cannot? Same thing with our military stuff. We sell jets and everything to other countries. What they do with it is their business. Like, same thing with your car. If you take your car and you ran somebody over, that becomes a weapon. If you don't, that's up to after you sign the paperwork, the dealership doesn't really care what you do with the car as long as you.
Well, but that's the question. Like, when we sell arms to a nation and we know what they do with it, like, again, look at what's happening now in the Middle East, right? And we're seeing, again, I don't want to get so, far into this, and again, YouTube and all that stuff or whatever. But again, we know where some of our arms, and we know what it's doing. You know that ahead of time. So again, does that then make it? Do we just wash our hands of it to say, well, look, they do what they want? Is it just business? And at what point, when does business become, because I mean, a lot of people, the mob says they're just a business.
Yeah.
so
it's
so every
funny
so again, it's
Manjoris mentioned this. This is my next thing I want to bring up. It was a movie called Hackjaw Revolution with this gentleman, Danos Ross. He was, again, Manjor, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. He was the last army personnel that was not able to use a firearm because he refused during World War II because he was very religious. He wanted to be a medic, and they told him, like, the guys beat him up. Pretty much, they tuned him up. I think that was called Cold Red back then. Or something like that. I'm not sure. So, from my knowledge, again, I'm not in the service. I have a lot of respect for the service. I have a lot of knowledge for the service because I wanted to be in the service when I was younger, and I still think it's very fascinating. Again, Major, please correct me if I'm wrong in the comment. He was the last person in the United States that did not pick up a firearm and went to war. Everybody, from medics to even priests, they have to learn to use a firearm to protect themselves.
Yeah, every man's a fight, especially in the Marines. Every man's a fighting man. Doesn't matter if you're a cook.
We had Bossman on here, for example.
Yeah.
And he said it. Every Marine is first a rifleman, then a whatever,
cook,
medic, chef, whatever
it is. Yeah.
And I believe, again, Major, please correct me in the comments, that goes across the board everywhere. From Army to Marines to Navy to Air Force, you become a soldier first. Let's get that through everybody's head. You're a soldier first. You're not Paul Bennett. I'll use you as an example, Paul. You're not. You go off the sitter number that's been given to you by whatever your son, it is. That's your military ID number. That's who you are now for the next 4 to 8 years. You become a soldier. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, but first thing you learn is how to kill, where to shoot, where not to shoot.
Yeah.
And he was the only soldier, again, in my knowledge, in our American history, did not pick up a weapon, a firearm to shoot back. He literally climbed that mountain to rescue his men multiple times. I think he saved his whole unit, if I'm not mistaken. You got to give that guy credit. You know what I'm saying? And if Majoro said he met him, man, that had to be a great experience. I'm actually jealous you met him. I'm not going to lie to you, that one.
Yeah. And he's agreeing with you that, again, in military, you're a soldier first and foremost. So that's when you sign up.
Yeah.
You take that. But again, are we going to see more? Like the biggest period of conscientious objectors, as I said earlier, was Vietnam. Especially after the Pentagon Papers came out and it basically spilled the beans on. Again, it wasn't even Nixon who was responsible, because this, you talk about Eisenhower and those guys who came before, and Kennedy and Johnson, right? So, but when that came out and you started to see the protests and the anti-war protests and whatnot, that was a major change in terms of how the country looked at war and military service. And even especially if, now again, you had some people like the religious right, they were like, look, God and country, and we fight on the side of right, and they weren't budging off of a pro-military a pro-military stance. And again, Mandrell's agreeing with you in terms of not only his combat buddies, but his enemies, combatants as well.
I didn't know the combat part. I knew his unit he saved. That part I did not know. But if anybody's fascinated to see this movie, it's on Netflix right now. Hacksaw River is literally on Netflix right now. If anybody has Netflix prescription, go check it out.
Yeah.
So, Netflix, you need to give us a little commission by this advertisement.
Yeah, right. Promote the boys. But like I said, that changed everything, right? Where we realized we weren't necessarily always on the side of God and might and righteousness. But that was a big thing promoted during World War II. We're fighting for God Almighty, and we're on the side of justice. And we got the spiel, we got the speech. And then Vietnam came, and people were like, what the heck? And that changed everything. That really, the generational divide really became split at that time. Because again, you had all those moms and dads who were alive and maybe served in World War II, and they had their kids who were like, I'm not going to Vietnam. So you had families broken up. over, over that particular theater of war. So yeah. So for a lot of people that a lot of people, they bounced. And like I said, you have religious groups that have a long-standing tradition. Not only do they not serve in the military, that they're not allowed to own a firearm. Some may make an exception if you only use it for hunting to get food for yourself. That's like the only reason why you should have a rifle. But you should not have a stockpile of handguns and all these other military weapons or whatever that, that a lot of people tend to have. And so you have, hey, shout out to Lady Navoa in the chat tonight. It's good to have you here. Hopefully you're enjoying the topic on the show. But yeah, these are, like I said, I didn't have this conversation to have an answer, but I wanted to have this conversation simply for that, to have a conversation. And I know people are going to be, pulling one way or the other. If you're hardcore military, do or die, semper fi, all the things and gung ho and whatnot, I appreciate that. But for those who are saying, no, I'm not even going to pick up a firearm, or I'm not even going to own a firearm, I appreciate that as well. But at the end of the day, it's like, history is oftentimes an inconvenient thing. And when we look at where money's being spent, where atrocities have been done, and when news outlets, when they report cover-ups and things of that nature, and things that, again, if you really got into the thick in terms of what things were done, not only with our military, but also like entities like the CIA, like that Kissinger documentary, they were working very closely with the CIA to basically undo governments in South America, in Chile with Allende, and Argentina, and all these, it's like if there was somebody there that they didn't want, CIA went in there. They had all these different programs like, look, we're going to break this up. We're going to cause a coup. We're going to do whatever. They were doing all kinds of actions that, again, if the country knew about it, they would be like, that's not supposedly who we are. But then you get the moment, like out of A Few Good Men, which is one of my favorite movies, is that famous line from Jack Nicholson: "You can't handle the truth." It's like, if you really want to know what this country did while you sleep under the banner of freedom, and you can go and do and all these things and whatnot, it's like you don't know what it takes in order for you to live this way. Then a person's going to have to really ask themselves, like, oh my gosh, am I simply just part of, as much as I say I want to object to something, but actually, am I a part of it? And is there a way I can sort of purge myself from it? And for some would say the only way you can still do it, you can simply say, move to an island remotely somewhere and just live under some palm trees or whatever, and just get out. Because in this geopolitical world that we're in, no one's hands are clean, and you're going to have to, either turn the other way and don't look at things that are done in the dark that you don't want to admit that happens, but then you want to claim that America is God's country. Because if it is God's country based on some of the things that we did, then I would be questioning God too, because of these things that are going on. So again, it's a very difficult question. Again, Mandrell, certainly, again, and Mandrell comes from a military family. I mean, he is military all the way down. World War II, down. And again, he's still, he's still questioning
So two things really
certain
fast.
things, but yeah.
So I mentioned in the past, my godfather was a 4-star general in the Navy. My grandfather served in World War II. My uncles, both of them, served in the Greek army. I have a lot of military background, believe it or not. But one thing I want to mention here, George S. Patton, you're familiar with him, right?
Yes.
One of his speeches, I want to specify one part. It goes, is America is waiting out of this war, not waiting to fight. Is a cock of bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
So he was his speeches were incredible in my opinion. I think he was one of the best general speeches I ever heard in my life. And I heard a lot of them over the years, because that's what I researched over the years before the YouTube world. So his speeches are very uplifting. But he also follows up, America loves to fight. All Americans love to sing class of battle. Think what he's saying for a minute. He's not saying we like to fight. We like to get out of the fight. But if you come in our doors knocking, knock, 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 we're going to answer with the same, the same way you came to our door. Again, I know things that we butter our heads in a lot of different wars. Let's be honest here, Paul. Sometimes we put our nose in places where it shouldn't be in.
Absolutely.
But
nation building
War
and
II,
all, yeah,
we had no choice. Our hand was force. And some of the best general, like
hang on,
Patton,
which one now? Which one?
War II.
Okay.
Our hand was forced in that one.
Right.
To get into it.
Right.
Because if it wasn't for poor Harvard, we probably would never got involved with that. Well, we passed the
No, not in the measure that we did. But now let me ask you this, just as a follow-up, since we're talking again. So again, World War II is like, that was the righteous war. That was a just war. We had to go in because of what was there. Do you agree with the dropping of the bombs?
Absolutely not. Those weapons should never been designed. There was too much power for one person.
But they were going to be designed, and that's part of the problem.
Even to now,
the Germans
even
were
now,
already. What's that?
Even now, even our current president wants those weapons retested and make sure they're functional.
Yeah,
we're asking for trouble in here. You put it in the public. It's different if you do it behind closed fucking doors. I'll give him that. But he went on the record saying, "Let's test these weapons to the world." Well,
but he also said, "Look, we're rebranding the Department of Defense to the Department of War." So again, the temperature has been raised since day one, since he came back. So that's not changing anytime soon. But again, the development of the bomb was inevitable, and this is a question also that people have to ask themselves. It's like, because again, it was Einstein who wrote Roosevelt and basically told him, look, the Germans are working on this stuff, because prior to Oppenheimer, we didn't have a nuclear physics department at any university in the United States. He was the first one to bring a nuclear physics department to the United States. What's that?
Wasn't the bomb built in Manhattan?
No, it's called the Manhattan Project. It was a code name. It was developed in like Arizona in the
okay. For some reason, I thought it started in New York and I moved to Arizona.
No, it never started in New York. It's just a code name for the.
I was wrong on that.
For the event, but again, Einstein wrote Roosevelt and said, "Look, German scientists right now. So this is the rise of the Nazis, and you got these German scientists, and they've cracked nuclear fission and nuclear fusion, and they're looking to weaponize this stuff. You better get your act together and get some people on this, otherwise they will." And so, and even then, like I said, we didn't have the personnel. In fact, a lot of those scientists, when World War II broke out, it allowed them, because a lot of them were Jewish. So it allowed for those people to come to the United States. So a lot of those early people who were Teller and all those guys, they were all German scientists. And they basically brought the knowledge to the United States that was woefully behind at the time when it came to nuclear technology or that kind of science. And so so that was going to be inevitable. But the question is, okay, yes, we got there first. Okay, we developed the first test of it, but should we have dropped them? I don't know the answer to that. Again, on a couple days of the week, I'll say yes, because they say it ended the war, even though technically more people died from the firebombing of Tokyo and other cities in Japan from the firebombings, the napalm firebombings, than the bombs that the nuclear weapons did. That's a fact, just based on the number of deaths. 150,000 people died in Tokyo because of the firebombings. So, and people argue that, again, if Japan's mindset was, we're going to fight to the last man, if the dropping the bombs, if that meant that it ended the war faster, then it was the right thing to do. But then some people say we could have got the same terms or whatever without it, or just if we did a test of it, that would have been enough to convince them. But, again, people debate that all the time in terms of, would the Japanese have surrendered without it? That conversation has been going on for 80 years. And we just celebrated
never going to get the answer to that.
We just celebrated the 80th anniversary a couple months ago. So again, every time there's like a August 6th or whatever, every time this comes up, there's always like a moment in history where they say, on August 6th, we dropped the first atomic bomb, and everyone wants to visit the discussion. But again, I don't know. But certainly I would say this: it does not follow just war theory. Because if the last point that said that, again, you apply force proportionate to the force that was inflicted on you, we lost 3,000 people in Pearl Harbor, but we killed millions in retaliation against that nation. Now, again, I'm not going to say, was it the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? But for those who want to bring just war up as a reason why we should do any kind of war, then I got to ask you the question. If you want to propose just war, then are you following it? I think that's a reasonable question to ask. Because if you are, then you can't justify the use of those weapons in that circumstance. Or not even the firebombings. You can't even justify those based on the rules of just war theory. You can't do that either. But we do these things. And it doesn't matter. We say, okay, we don't kill civilians. Again, even in the Obama administration, a lot of those drones hit civilian populations. We know that. I don't know if that's even inevitable. But that's kind of where we are with it. So again, this is one of the grayest areas in my life. And again, I've never served. I can't imagine what it's like for some military. Now, again, if you're, like I said, if you're gung ho and you're like, yeah, like the Mandrell's favorite line from Full Metal Jacket, get some. That used to be on his used to play that on his channel. You could be one of those guys. I can't, look, I can't help you then, But some people, they're like, yeah, bring it on. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. If you're that kind of guy or person, then hey, you're all in, and you're just looking to just blow some stuff up. That's on you. But for others who may, try to have a more peaceful life, they may choose other options. And so I can, so I said, but I can rock with. I'm not against the pacifist. Nor am I against the person who applies just war, or even if you go beyond that. But these are questions that more and more people are asking, especially in the age of technology, especially now when people are starting to ask questions. Why are we here? Or how much are we spending this much, and you got people who can't get their food stamps? What are we doing? The public is asking these questions. And I think that, we can't run away from from having these. So it's going to get into these areas. Again, are we doing the right things? Or am I going to take a position? I'm out. So that's kind of where it is. I mean, you can follow up there. We got about 15 minutes left in the show. Certainly we appreciate the folks coming in tonight. Again, make sure you hit the like button, certainly as you come in. And again, we like I said, we personally appreciate our vets. So again, Mandrell, I hadn't seen my guy Anton tonight, but I know he's former military. JT, all our guys. So interesting how many guys who are military. Certainly that we have the privilege to build relationship with and have fellowship with in this
even
space.
On my side stuff too.
So yeah. So again, I am not trying to crap on our military or the guys who had the guts to sign up for anything. But I'm just a person who's just trying to, again, live my life out, and these questions are being asked, and I got to ask myself, how would I do in a situation? When I was a kid, I dreamed about the army because, again, back in the day, the way they used to promote the military, they used to have those be all you can be commercials where the guy is rappelling down a mountain or jumping out of a helicopter. And we were like, this is cool. All those the G.I. Joe ads back in the day. So all of us, we just had a very high regard. We were too young to know about what really happened in Vietnam in the 70s and the early 80s. We were too young to know all that stuff until later. But the image of the image that we would play at toys, we had those little green military men, and we would set up stations and patrols and stuff, and we would, act out scenes and whatnot. We loved the, military was like the coolest guys in the world. When they were talking about you can get the GI Bill and go to college and get $17,500 for college, for a lot of us, we were like, yeah, man, we're like 10, 12 years old. It's like, yeah, when I get 18, sign me up.
See, I'm still one of the few people I think that we need a draft back. I will always say that. I know it's never going to happen. That's my personal opinion. But I was in a little different boat than you, because you know how I feel about, the military. And I mentioned it multiple times tonight's stream, is I'm a big fan of it. I'm not going to deny that. Me thinking about joining the military wasn't a commercial, to be honest. It wasn't G.I. Joe. It wasn't Rambo. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was everybody that I grew up around it. Like, I may be walking down the street and I see an old bunker of, World War II over there. Like, I used to go to my grandma. Yeah. What is that? Like, oh, that's from World War II. That's just chaos. She didn't care. It was like normal, because there is so many things around from the ancient Greeks into World War II. So even on a Pentagon, they still have the gun mount that they were shooting Germans down. So the Greece had started draft. I knew I was going in. So I remember going to Greece the last years ago, and going through my check-in, carrying my passport. The officer goes, my system's not letting you clear. I don't know why. So he gets his commanding officer. He goes, I got to talk to you in the office. I'm like, okay. I didn't do anything wrong. My mom follows me in. So what the fuck is going on with my son? He goes, you skipped the draft. I'm like, draft? I'm like, oh. And like, I said, oh. My mom looked at me. I looked at her. I go, cool. She slapped me over the fucking head with that one. That one actually hurt.
You skip the drafts. No drafts. What you talking about?
Greece,
did you register? What's that? Oh, in Greece. Okay.
Yeah, wait, I was leaving Greece to come back to the States.
Oh, okay.
Vacation.
So what was your What was your citizenship status? Were you dual?
I got dual. Then? I got dual.
So even if you're dual citizenship, you still have to
absolutely.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I know. I'm saying I'm explaining to you. I'm not saying you're saying anything wrong. Absolutely, you have to. It's no choice. It doesn't matter if let's say you move to Greece right now. You probably be out the age limit, but you're still gonna have to serve something. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like you'll be peeling potatoes most likely. You know what I'm saying? Right. You're gonna go through boot camp, and then the rest of the time you're gonna peel potatoes. You're not gonna send you to protect the borders, because the whippersnappers are gonna be outrunning you. No offense, and that.
That's fine.
But again, in your physique, you probably outrun them.
I mean, I'm outlift them though.
But most of them are smokers, so you might have an upper edge there.
Maybe.
So the draft is still a big effect. I see military people walking around in their uniforms, and I'm like, that is cool. And my mom looked at me like, I can't fucking win with you. I never can win with you. And like, that's why I've been on multiple bases through family members in Greece. And like, to me, it was like walking on base, like it was nothing, because I had, my friend is visiting, or my cousin is visiting, or my aunt, my mom, or so whatever, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it was nothing, it was normal for me. So me going to the military was like excitement. I couldn't wait till I turned 18 until they picked my ass up. And my mom was fearing that day like it was no tomorrow. And she don't like, even when I said I was going to join the military here, she goes, oh shit, here we go again. And like, she can never fucking get away with it. And I tell kids these days, like, listen, if you don't want a big ass bill for college, join the military. And like, right. I have friends of mine who are nurses.
Right. Well, it's interesting now. Like I said, I'm just curious about what's going to be the state of promotion of it now, because like I said, I mean, it got to a point where military service was everything about war, anything but war.
I am sorry.
It was about going to college. They're even trying to recruit like hackers and gamers because the stuff is there, or cyber. Like the army ad was promoting cyber, right? So again, it's like you're not going after the typical grunt guy's going to be soldier. But again, I'm just wondering if that's going to change now, where they like, look, we want a fighting person's army, and we want soldiers. We don't want hackers. We don't want people. We want people who want to fight. I don't know what the status that's going to be in the future, but
I was literally speaking to a draft sergeant the other day. He was drafting in people with like a good friend of mine, and the conversation went the opposite way that I thought it was going to go, not in a bad way. And we both agreed one thing, and like today's military are a bunch of pussies. Simple as that. I'm like, back in the day, and Majority's going to back me up on this one. They used to give you a card, right? And when you get there, you make a phone call. It was like 4 or 5 lines saying, "Hey, my name is, this is Mr. Loriches. I have arrived. I am safe. Goodbye." Click. Now, hey, I just got here. What's going on? I'm looking at the fucking few of my friends, their kids got drafted. Just went. I'm like, are they fucking serious? They like have their cell phones. You can get a waiver, have a beard. You get a waiver for this, a waiver for that. Literally, I know a friend of mine. Her son has chronic asthma. I'm saying serious, bad fucking asthma. And guess what? He got a waiver to get into the Navy.
Yeah.
The Navy, I'm old people. Okay, Air Force, maybe I can see that passing. But you need to fucking be able to hold your breath for a long fucking time under that water if you go through the water training.
We don't want to trip Mandrill off, because you know how he feels about the Navy and all these other branches. We don't want to get Mandrill upset.
I'm not going to say the N word then.
The Navy.
I'm not going to say the CO word.
Some other branch of the
16.
But
my point is trying to get to is very weak now. They take anybody right now. I remember early 2000s. You're right. They were recruiting people with this is when I was coming out of high school. And the first thing, how you go to games? And they went to me like, I'm pretty good. Why? They hand me a Corolla. Like, the fucking supposed to do with this? They looked at each other like, you're supposed to play with it. With what? They put me in front of a PlayStation and goes, they see how good you are. Okay. I'm like, you're pretty good, actually. Not as good as we want to, but pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Mandrill, he's co-signed. Yeah. Back in the day, they called, you read from the script or whatever, click, hang up, and that was it. So
that's it. And people think I'm talking out my ass. I'm not, actually. It's legit. And I know one of my coworkers, her son is going in. And when I was telling her the other day, she was getting fucking mad. I go, no, don't get mad. And she, the argument, if he was a little smarter, he can go to the Air Force. They only take smart people. Like, it doesn't matter how smart you are. They still need people to fuel the trucks. They need people to be grunts still. And as long as he passes the ASVAB, I think it's like 32% he needs to pass. He can get in any branch he wants, except that Marines, that's 35%. I believe you have to get in that. Except they changed the number since years ago. But my point for sure, trying to get to is you can get in any branch you want, but there are always waivers now. Back in the day, it wasn't any waivers. Mandrill time, it was no waivers. CQ's time, no waivers. King's the pick King, so I'm not going to use that example. But my point is trying to
it's a catch-22, right? I mean, you almost want, like I said, people who don't want to be like, if that's what you want people who are physically fit and willing to comply with stuff. You want to kind of get those people out. If you want to sign a waiver, I would rather you sign a waiver and get out versus me having to trust you in the field of battle or whatnot. And you're either going to be a deserter or you're going to be something else or whatever. So again, if you're not the one, that's the only reason why. Now, again, I go back and forth on the draft. I wouldn't mind the draft if it feeds into like how things used to be in terms of physical fitness. So I know we've all seen those videos of the 60s high school where the guys are training like what gym class used to be like. And the reason it was that way was because you were grooming people for the draft, right? Especially in the 60s and whatnot. So again, you had these fit guys doing drills. They were climbing the ropes. They were jumping over barricades. They were doing all kinds of calisthenics and whatnot. I remember gym class for me. We used to have these military setups. We do jumping jacks and burpees, and you had to do it to a cadence and all those kind of things. So towards an extent, I wouldn't mind the draft because I think it gives you some discipline and some structure. But at the same time, if you're talking about who do you want as far as part of your fighting force, I don't think a lot of these folks today will even make the cut. And if you're going to be somebody who's like, look, I need a waiver because I got asthma, I'm like, fine, get out. Do your 1 year of basic training or whatever, 18 months or whatever, and then get out. Because again, I don't want to have to trust you in the field and you're
But
going to
here's
get
what's wrong, Paul.
asthma attack or something.
But those guys who have asthma, you can make them cooks. You can make them mechanics. There are a lot of jobs in the military. They're not non-combatant jobs too.
Mhm.
They're like those guys who can combat. Put them in the combat if that's what the job, what they score, score on their test.
But it
whatever.
didn't need to be that way because but you can't do it. If you're saying every man or woman is a fighting person, that you're a soldier first,
I agree on that. Yes.
then they got to pass that. I'm saying if they can't pass being a soldier first, then get them out.
Oh, yeah. I totally understand that. I totally agree with that. Yeah. I'm not disagreeing, but I'm saying if they somehow pass that boot camp part of it,
Right.
and they still have asthma, make them a chef, make them a mechanic.
Well, yeah. But
Yeah,
I think that would be amazing. If you come there with you got all these ailments, you're on these drugs and everything or whatever, but you can still survive boot camp and they don't make it easier for you and you still pass it. I may still be like, look, I mean, want this person because
Bro, even
the fact that you were able to overcome that stuff and still perform, I mean, that's impressive.
At my age, literally in 27 days, I'll be 40. Don't rub it in. Nobody rub it in. So the test, you have to run so many miles. All right.
Correct.
They have extended it so much. I can run out these guys, and I'm not a runner because of my knees. One of my knees gets fucked up in martial arts, so I'm not really a big runner. So I can outwalk them. I'll put it this way. That's how easy it is now. Like I remember there was one kid I used to go to school with. He goes to me, "I'm going on in the military." I looked at him like, "Yeah, you're not even going to get past the physical test."
Right.
He was so overweight. I mean, obesity style. I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He was wearing like 3XL shirts.
Right.
And no gym. He skipped gym all the time. He never played in sports. The only thing he said, computer and play video games. That's what he did all day long.
Yeah.
And he was one of those kids like, man, I feel bad for you, dude. And he goes, I'm going in the military. Like, and when his dreams got crushed, like, you have to lose about 250 pounds to meet us to even look at you.
Wow.
And that was nearly impossible at that point, the way his lifestyle was.
Yeah.
But again, now, like, I see some soldiers a little bit overweight, but not like obesity. Like, they have a little gut. You know what I'm saying? Usually I see that in the Air Force and the Navy side of it, but not as much in the Army or Marine Corps.
Yeah.
But let's see.
Yeah. All right, we can start to land this plane. This has been, again, a really good discussion. And again, I promise to Mandrell, again, on our call-in show in a couple weeks, if you want to come back on, in fact, what I would love to have is to get a panel of those who've been in, like Mandrell, as well as some conscientious objectors. Right? I mean, people who like, yeah, I've been in and I'm a pacifist now, whatnot. So again, somebody who's been in the theater of war. Because again, it's easy for me and Pete to go back and say, or get on our high horse and say, oh yeah, war is wrong, or just that and the third, or whatever. It's easy for, I don't think that's a fair conversation. But to get people who've had combat experience or who've been in that theater and be able to give a perspective that's different. I think that would be a great conversation to have. I would love to have it. If anybody knows somebody who is an objector of some kind, or maybe have resigned a post in the military because of conscience, and they would like to be part of the conversation, we can arrange a show in the future where we can have the military guys kind of hash this out. Because in a lot of respects, I don't feel qualified to even talk about this. But again, I'm just a person who's always questioning, always seeking, always looking for answers to complex questions. And military service, just war theory, pacifism, again, I can see all of it. And but I like hearing from people who, and I've seen debates. I've watched almost every debate that I possibly could on the subject. I've been scouring YouTube since the summer, listening to different debates from different people from different perspectives, and a lot of those perspectives are informed by religious conscience and beliefs. A lot of it's formed by just ethics. And so again, you have different people who make an argument, and I think both sides of that argument, they both have valid points to make. War, I think, is a dirty business, and it is business, not so much as far as honor or protecting innocent people or whatever. There's a whole lot of stuff that has to be considered when it comes to war and wartime stuff. So I get all of that when it comes to it. But again, I want to be a facilitator for healthy, positive, respectful conversation. And again, this is no question, as I said earlier, this is without a doubt one of the greatest areas for a lot of people who've been and seen things that no one ever should see. People who've seen the debasing of humanity in some of these places and whatnot, and you'd be asking yourself, it's like, am I doing the right thing or not? That's one of the reasons why we ask as a question, especially when at least one of the ones I like to ask is, what is your gray area? Because a lot of guys go into the military gung-ho and fighting for country and God and country, and then you be seeing stuff and be like, oh my gosh, I'm not even fighting for the right side. You may ask yourself that at some point in time, and I respect that. And that's why I like to hear from the vets who've seen things. How did it shape you as a person when you got the real, when the elevator speech that you were pitched about, join the service and you'll do this and you'll live over the world and you'll travel and you'll do all these things, but you've been seeing some realities that where it looks more like a nightmare than a dream. And so I'm always looking to get that perspective from former vets as well. But your final thoughts, Pete, as we close the show?
It doesn't matter which side you look at it. This topic is an ugly topic. So you got to be a little uncomfortable to talk about it. But I know me and you talked about it in behind the scenes. Like, I love to get everybody we had on a show in a room and talk about their war stories. Like a smoke pit almost. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you talked about it. That'd be a very interesting time. I mean, live, everybody in one big room. Maybe we're going to make it happen this summer. Let's see.
All right.
That's my goal.
Alrighty. Well, again, we want to thank you guys for joining us once again on the show. Again, make sure you hit the like button, not only here on the Black Man Unfiltered Network, hop on over to Sparta HQ Network and certainly hit the like button as well. Yes.
Forget, I know we didn't have time to we have a guest on my side of the channel, so tune in. He's a military guy from the Coast Guard, so he will be on at 10 o'clock tomorrow night on the Sparta HQ Network, so check him out.
Yes, absolutely. So definitely look forward to that. But certainly, again, we appreciate you guys being with us tonight. And again, rewatch, share your thoughts, and think about these things. Are you more favoring being a pacifist, or are you a just war person, or are you just a war hog? You just want to go out and just again get some. So what do you fall on the side of the ledger? Yeah, certainly we'd like to know. But again, we appreciate you guys for being with us once again. Enjoy the rest of your week. For myself, Mr. Bennett, and he is
This is Sparta!
the Ghost of Sparta, aka Peter, aka Panagiotis. This is the gray area. Take care. God bless, and we will see you next time. Good night.